Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast life. Today I am joined by Eric Silver and we are going to be talking about podcast development. I know I've talked about pre-production and other things in this realm, but I wanted to dive deeper on it. So Eric, the first question I have for you is, what is the first question you ask someone when they tell you they want to start a podcast?
My first question would be, why? Why would you want to do this? The funny thing about podcasting is that very few people use it as their first / most important content stream. So if people are starting a podcast, they either are using this as a way to promote something that isn't usually online, like, I don't know, they're a professor who wants to start a podcast and don't want to get into YouTube. Or it's like, this is going to be my fifth thing, and I want to have a fifth thing because I have 4 other things, and it hasn't totally hit yet. Or like, you're a celebrity, and it's like, I'm a celebrity, and I feel like I should have a podcast. So the question is always like, why do you want one? And then we can go from there. Because having a good podcast is all about intention, right? All art is about intention. But if you're going to, I think to that point, if you're going to do something, you should actually try and make it good. And for a podcast, it's almost like that's not a given. You got to remind people that they should try to make it good. And good doesn't necessarily mean like, I'm going to spend 3 years and $500,000 on it, making 6 episodes of a limited series. It's, I'm going to make it good and set up a situation where I can put out weekly episodes and everyone's having a good time.
Yeah, not everything needs to be a serial or Gimlet series.
I mean, neither of those things exist anymore, right? I find that so funny where it's like, oh, you mean something that was an offshoot of This American Life or from a company that doesn't exist anymore?
Yeah.
When we talk about limited series and the amount of money and time that goes and manpower that goes into it, it's like, good, but I mean, those were sold on totally different situations than you starting it now, and now everyone just goes around trying to like get money like it's a Hollywood project, and if that's the only way that you know how to make digital art, I think that we have different ideas of why we do stuff on the internet and have the jobs that we do.
Yeah, like there's a reason Gimlet does not exist anymore.
I think Gimlet always existed as like a real traditional tech startup. It's like, this exists to be bought. I think it always was. I recently re-listened to the first episode of Startup and the first episode of the last season of Startup. If you remember, the first season of Startup was like, oh, Alex Bloomberg wants to get this company going. He wants to have a podcast. He wants to have a podcast company. Obviously, it was 2014. The only way to do that was with VC funding. What a time. What a time.
Yeah.
And then the last season was 9 months after the Gimlet sale to Spotify. And the whole thing was like, actually, we needed to, and this is really great. It was such like tech agitprop PR. So comparing the two, and in both of them, he complains that conversational podcast and Dak Shepard is making it hard for him to do what he does. It's really funny. So it's like, it's funny when we're talking about why do we want to make a show, you got to consider it on its own merits and not of this is what the podcasting industry wants, because the podcasting industry is still so nascent. It barely exists on its own. It's still propped up by people's ideas from Hollywood, but also people's ideas from taking a break from their YouTube channel or now getting steered in now Gimlet, now Google and Spotify are telling us that podcasting has been YouTubing the whole time. And it's like, no, it's not. And they're like, yes, it is. Do what we want. So if you gotta be very mindful and block out what other people are telling you when you want to start a new show, especially in 2025.
Yeah. So once someone has their why nailed down, what is your process for solidifying the concept of the show?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's a process. It is definitely a process. I think once it streams from the why, you got to set up all of these situations. You got to set up all of these processes to make it actually happen. I have 3 tenets of what I think makes a good podcast. One is it's unique. whether it is doing something in a landscape that needs a new perspective, whether it hasn't been done before, whether the structure is different, it has to be unique. Even if it's like, well, all the white guys are going to talk about movies, now I get to talk about movies, that's good enough. That's going to fill a niche in a market that somebody wants, right? So it has to be unique. The second is you need to set up situations to make it as good as possible, whether that is literal audio fidelity and quality, like use the tools at your benefit, like make it sound good, make it edited, but also anything else you can think of, just try, try to do something. And then the third is make sure it comes out regularly and then is able to be monetized through a Patreon or ads in your future or whatever. And all of those take processes and expertise. And that could take like many, many meetings with your creative team to figure it all out. And giving yourself the time to actually define those processes is essential, because it's like you're putting out a late night show. Honestly, podcasting is very close to late night. It's like I listen to my Tuesday podcast the same way that people tuned in at 11:30 to listen to watch Johnny Carson, right? So setting yourself up for success and putting out that ongoing thing and then fulfilling the brief that you put out in your show, your unique show, you got to make sure that you're ready to do it. And that takes a lot of conversations and a lot of like job defining from everyone involved, even if it's just one person.
Yeah. And obviously, depending on how many people are involved in the process, the development process could be a short time frame or a long time frame. When you're developing a show, do you typically have the hosts do test episodes to just make sure like everything is working the way everyone is hoping before actually doing those episodes that are going to be released?
Ooh, well, you said like a bunch of things in a row there, which is complicated because it's like, well, it depends how much the person who's making the show wants to hear what I have to say, right? If I am a producer on a work for hire and a big company has hired me and it's like, here's what the talent wants to do, they just want to do it. It's like, all right, we had this meeting, you guys do whatever you want, right? But theoretically, if they want to hear what I have to say, then yeah, that you got to do some piloting, because it's like part of this large process that I do. It's something I started doing with Join the Party, and I've done it for like tens of shows now. And this thing I call the whiteboard day, where you spend your whole time kind of deconstructing the show, figuring out its audience, figuring out where it fits out in the landscape, and then literally structuring the whole thing and defining the bones. And podcasting is so much about capturing lightning in a bottle when you're recording, like having a good time, keeping the energy up. And then all the work happens in pre and post production, that giving that stuff a shot and then doing it again if you don't think is good enough. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? Like people are going to bring like the fact that someone can carry an entire episode without having any sort of structure and just like riff for an hour. That means you are talented, but that doesn't mean that the podcast is good. Right? Like if we're defining it on the merits of the genre and the episode and the fact that we're making a specific art project in a medium, like that doesn't mean anything. So if it's not what you want it to be, why would you put it out? And also, no one cares about your show until you start putting out episodes. So like, why wouldn't you take as much time as possible to make sure it was good? Definitely piloting process is essential, if only to like make it a proof of concept. If you like your proof of concept, then put it out there.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the nice thing about test episodes is that if they do go well, you can still use them. They don't necessarily need to be your first episode or something, but if you're doing something like an interview show, you can do a few interviews ahead of time and be like, okay, this is what worked, this didn't. And you can even just keep like pieces of them if you want to for like social content or something. Like,
yeah, if you want to.
There are multiple uses. I say this as someone who did not do test episodes for this podcast, but it's fine.
mean, you can learn on the fly. You're allowed. You're totally allowed. It's mostly, I think this was very much a thing, I think, during this kind of first burst of podcasting, like from 2013 to 2019. I define it from like when Serial started, or 2014, I guess, from when Serial started to when Gimlet got bought, was I think this golden age. And it's kind of funny because I think that there was also a lot of gatekeeping and hoarding of knowledge. I think podcasting started blowing up, and everyone who had worked at a radio station was like, oh, you like the thing that I'm doing? I'm going to keep doing it and not teach anyone else how to do it. This is my job. This is mine now. So it's like there were a lot of shows that got much better over time because people were like, oh, I want to figure out this medium, but no one will teach me. I'm just going to record it on my computer and put it in the middle of a table and just record that for 10 episodes. And they're like, oh, I'm realizing I shouldn't have done that. It's like, well, no one told me otherwise. So I had to figure it out. It was very much like, especially now, but I think it's always been this way in the medium, is like making it sound as good as possible, as quickly as possible, is essential for making people think that you are a real thing.
Yeah. And to be fair, this is my 6th podcast that I've started.
Yeah, there you go.
So I've definitely had plenty of reps in, even though everything else I did was on very different topics than this one.
I'm telling you, you're doing a fine job, Deanna. As a podcast professional, this is going great.
I appreciate it. So the thing about development too is that I feel like a lot of people think that's something you only focus on before the launch of a podcast. But like you were just saying, things change over time. And so how do you handle changes to shows that have already started and sort of retooling that development process on the fly?
That's a good question. I think that having ongoing meetings just about how the show is going is the way to do it. It can be bi-monthly. It could be monthly if you really like talking about stuff. It can be quarterly, but I think that having some sort of meeting, checking in about the show, doing innovative stuff and doing new stuff and doing fun stuff is essential. The number of times I've tried to institute those meetings and then they get thrown out because people don't want to do them has happened to me a lot, but that's when the shows get stagnant and there is no more development. I don't know. It's a hard line to follow because people like your show for a defined reason, right? Like they like hanging out with you. They like what you're talking about. And if you're successful, whatever that means to you, you might think, oh, I'm just going to keep doing this. But again, I see this as an art project. I see this as a creative medium. I think innovation and doing cool shit is, and even like, you know, in the digital creator parlance sort of thing. Oh, let's make time to think about collaborations we could do. Let's think about how we're going to guest on other shows. Like it's kind of essential just to talk about the innovating and continuing to push that show forward and not just letting it just doing it once and going. But again, it comes down to whether or not you care about a podcast itself as a creative entity.
Yeah. Are you a fan of shows that have segments, or are you someone who can just listen to a show that's sort of just like one longer conversation and you're good with that?
I love segments. You know I love segments. That was a leading question. I mean, game shows are wonderful. Game shows fit so well into podcasting. And I think they also fit very well into, where our most highest echelons of what people associate with like good online stuff now. Like when we're talking about Game Changer or lots of stuff on the Dropout streaming service, or even Hot Ones. Hot Ones is kind of like a game show, but it's also like an interview with a twist, which is almost like being unique. Yeah. So inserting games or some sort of game show structure or even just segments is very humans like that. They just like doing different things throughout. Maybe this is me, like this is very much like a sports thing, or like I'm very inspired by The Ringer with this stuff. Like they've always had segments, or at least like, you know, if you're going to talk about a movie, let's have categories, like different things we're going to discuss. So yeah, segments are really important. I think it's about like the micro and the macro structure of your show. If your show has good structure anyway, then you don't need segments. But if you want to have like not an overarching segment, if you don't want to have like an overarching structure, go do something else for like 10 minutes. Even if it's at like at the end of even if it's at just like the end of the show. Like, I don't know. It's very hard talking about some of this stuff because it's like anthropology or like semiotics, where it's like we're having a discussion on like regular human conversation. It's like, yeah, humans like games. Humans like gamifying stuff. Humans like having a little fun thing in the middle of a conversation. Like it has to be intentional because it seems very basic, But if you don't do it, then you don't do it. And then you're just kind of talking for 90 minutes, which is tough.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why I have been keeping these episodes shorter. But now you have me thinking about some segment ideas that I could implement in the future.
Segments are good. Do segments. I mean, an interview show is different, right? I think how are you going to distinguish the interview show? It's like, well, either there's an overarching difference, like you're eating hot wings that get increasingly hotter as you go, and the questions are good. Like, okay, let's talk about Hot Ones for a second, because I think Hot Ones is incredibly good version of a podcast. The way that a podcast is a talk show and a talk show on YouTube, it's the same. But let's talk about that for a second. So Hot Ones is great because they're like, we're going to interview people who are usually very guarded. It came from Complex interviews rappers. They care about hip hop a lot. A lot of the earliest guests on Hot Ones were rappers. How do you get rappers who have very defined brands and personae to break down? You make them do something silly and fun, but not too not something that's going to make them not look hard or composed or cool, right? So eating hot wings is actually a really good idea. And of course, then they get hotter and hotter. They get to talk about how hot it is the whole time, and they can either steam through it or drink milk or bail like DJ Khaled did. But the questions are all really good. I think that the research team behind Hot Ones is incredible, right? And Sean Evans as a host is really good for it. He's just a cipher. He's just, the fact that he is a bald white guy eating these wings is also part of the bit, right? Like, that's why he was cast as the host, and the research team does it. But the questions themselves are just good. They're not unique necessarily. The uniqueness comes from the structure, right? So if you're going to do a talk show or an interview show, you have to do something that's unique. Now, obviously, we need more and more good podcast interview shows, so just doing this might be a good enough reason, but you'd have to do the landscape analysis, the genre analysis to figure that out. You could do other stuff here that would make it unique and make something that the audience would be attracted to. Like, if you pulled out some audio that I recorded in 2016 and you showed it to me and you're like, what was bad about this? That could be a unique segment where you confront people with their bad audio, or I don't know. Or you find tweets from 2012 about podcasting and you show it back to them. Like, this is what I'm saying. It's like there's you can have a macro structure, unique structure, or a micro unique structure just by inserting segments.
Yeah, that's great.
See, I just did that on the fly. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing I really wanted to ask after listening to some of your answers is, what would you say to the person who is like me, who is doing this with no team? What would your advice be to those people with developing and figuring out a concept before starting a show?
I mean, you can still do it. I say that podcasting is a team sport because there are a lot of different skills that need to go into it. And I mean, you are a very good video editor. You're a very good audio editor. And I respect that deeply. I don't want to edit either of those things, so I will pay you to do that thing, right? But there are parts of podcasting that almost get either ignored or are taken for granted. For example, a host who is a celebrity, it is taken for granted that they are talented and good at this. Maybe they're not. It is. I say all the time when I'm a professor, I teach podcasting at Stony Brook University. When I talk about all of the jobs that are in podcasting, like, one job is host and another job is co-host. Hosting is driving the conversation, literally when you're interviewing someone, but also like being the person who prepares the segment is like being the host, or at least even more so than being the center of attention, and the reason why everyone's there. With many celebrity podcasts, that's why that would be. Co-host is about listening. It's about riffing. It's about bouncing off of each other. So it's like the hosting and being on the microphone is a skill, just as much as anything that I'm doing is, just as much as anything that you are doing is. And I think that when you are doing this by yourself, you just need to wear all of those hats and remember that there's different stuff. There's a lot of different things to do, and they're going to require different parts of your brain. Yeah. So it's like, do the journaling thing. put time aside for you to think about how your episodes can be more interesting. Put time aside to think about collaboration. Put time aside for you to do an audit of like the last 6 months of your work and ask yourself if it's good enough. Ask yourself what you want to change. You need to put time aside to do podcasting landscape and genre development and figuring out where you fit in your genre of podcasts and how you can do better than what other people are doing and maybe steal from different genres and bring it to your genre. Like, even if you're by yourself, you more just need to carve the time out to do these different individual activities, even if it just kind of gets subsumed into podcast.
Yeah. And a piece of advice that I've seen a lot, and I think it also works better for me, is to not try to do everything for an episode start to finish in one sitting.
Oh, yeah.
Like you were saying, do that journaling, do the editing separate. And look, I'm guilty of not doing this. I literally recorded a 5-minute solo episode yesterday, edited it, and then scheduled it immediately.
I mean, but that's fun. But you knew what you were going to do, right?
And it was 5 minutes. But
yeah.
I'm not going to go edit this episode right after we're done.
I guess the thing that I want to say to build off what your answer was, you making a mea culpa for you putting out your own thing. It's like, well, development is different.
Yeah.
I think development is time where you think about new ideas to do for your show.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the person who thinks about that is also called your producer, as the person who like puts the nuts and bolts together and coordinates with the talent and coordinates with the post-production team and maybe posts. But I think development is its own activity, which is why so many more and more people have the job title of development, or as it's related to partnerships, or as it's related to like, I don't know, creative structural manager or whatever. Like project manager in tech is kind of just like development, honestly, while also being a producer. Because podcasting doesn't have it like actual defined titles and it just steals stuff from other places. Like,
yeah,
you got to remember to put that stuff aside, because no one's going to tell you to do it because everything is so squishy.
Well, speaking of titles, you were recently head of development at Multitude Productions, and now I want to just talk a little bit about what's next for you since you've left that role. Are you freelancing? What's going on?
Yeah. Well, first, the funny thing about it is that my job title wasn't always head of development. It was head of creative. But since for so much, both like in doing like talking to shows as a part of the Multitude Collective and also talking to shows that were part of our work for hire, it's like no one wanted creative notes. Like there's something about being talent that also was like, actually, I'm the only one who gets to do the fun part, which is what I'm saying. It's like, it's not fun. I wish I had an editor. Like in a journalistic sense, all I want is an editor, like someone to tell me, actually, that's good. Actually, that's bad. Mm-hmm. Think about this more. And I don't think people in podcasting really have their head around that just yet. They think that doing the creative is fun and doing anything else is not fun. It's a fallacy, but also keep paying Deanna to edit your podcast for you. You know what I mean?
Yes, so please do.
Yeah. So what's happening next? I don't know. Freelancing is very odd as someone who didn't come from the public radio. That time I was talking about the golden age where everyone gatekept how to make a podcast. Mm-hmm. And like, people have been doing that forever. Like NPR is backed by like traveling Ronin, like, who come in, edit your show for you and then disappear into the night. So I feel like if I do that, I'm competing with not only these long-standing living legends who make shows and get all those jobs, but also the freelancers scamming people out of thousands of dollars, teaching them how to make a podcast that they could just Google resources I've already written and be fine. So I don't know. I'm figuring out what to do next. I think I'm really looking forward to hopefully doing this business stuff, doing this development stuff. I really relish being the most creative person in a room of business people and the most business-minded person in a room of creative people. And hopefully I can kind of do that in a more structured way, as like, a manager, a head of development, a head of partnerships sort of thing. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to having a salary again. I really am.
Yeah, as someone who has been freelancing for a while now, I have forgotten what it's like to have a salary.
Yeah, just to like figure that out. I don't know, but I think it's never been more advantageous to be a freelance editor. I'll tell you that much. Like more and more people are, especially having video editing skills like you do, more and more people are just like, do this for me. I want to do the fun parts. I don't want to do the other parts. And I would do that, like writing their episodes descriptions and titles. But I think that I have a wealth of knowledge of like getting things done, doing interesting stuff, and hopefully running these creative processes. And hopefully I can kind of do that in a more structured job environment.
Yeah. Well, last thing, Eric, is there anything about development that you want to make sure people know that we didn't touch on?
It's important. Like, do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. Honestly, like if you actually give a shit about this thing, just do it. Put schedules on your calendar. I think there's something about development that is a little bit interlocking with operations because it's just about defining processes and then putting them on a calendar. Have a regular meeting about how the show is going. Make a defined recording time on your calendar for when you do record your podcast every day at Thursday at 4 p.m. Because if you're waiting to hire someone like an editor or producer to then tell you that, it's already a problem that you as the person driving the show forward are not invested in the ongoing creative process that is making your podcast. Like just, this is important to do it. It's showing care to you as a creator and the show as your creative project that works with you. When you're recording a podcast, I say this all the time. It's like there are so many people in the room. It is everyone recording, maybe the producer or the editor who's going to do the post-production pass. The audience is in the room, and also the show is in the room too. The show should be able to stand up on its own and say, hey, let's go to the next segment when you go on like a 10-minute digression about how Gimlet was a fraud. You know what I mean? So it's like, so it's more, I think that you're doing to yourself a disservice if you don't get your show ready to stand up on its own and allow yourself time to think about the cool shit you could be doing with the show, even from a bi-monthly meeting.
Yeah, time blocking definitely helps. I've noticed my life is a bit more chaotic when I don't do it.
Yeah. And like, just do it. Like, it's on your calendar. Doing a creative meeting should not be less important than other things on your calendar. Because when else are you going to do it if you don't put time aside to do it?
Yeah, that's a big thing I've been trying to tell myself lately. It's like, yes, your podcast does not make you any money right now, but you have to put the time in if you want it to make money.
Yeah, exactly. You got to make it. It's free now, but you know, if it gets big enough, you can hire your own editor, Deanna. Then you can be like, yeah, do it. I don't want to edit this. You do it.
Yeah. Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Always here to talk about podcasting stuff.